going to be the staff representative at.
Did she disappear?
And she.
Uh-oh, lost Cass.
Going to be the staff representative at.
Okay. Well, I hope that wasn't.
Heard her for a second.
Oh, I think maybe she. I turned the recording on, and I think maybe she accidentally hit end instead of accept or something. So we are. I was just here to set up the recording aspect, which we are live now, and we'll see if Cass can jump back on because she has the introductory remarks. I will put the agenda in for those who don't have it because I think she put it in before everyone got on.
It's already in the chat.
Oh, okay, it is in the chat. Great. Perfect. All right, we'll just wait a minute here and see if she's able to hop back on. I don't have the introductory remarks or the agenda pulled up, so we will just wait and see if she does. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Oh, hold on just a moment.
Shane, if you're talking to us, we can't hear you.
Sorry, everyone. Cass is trying to get back on here. So just give us one more second.
It's a conspiracy theory that's holding us up.
Surely. I wonder if anybody can paraphrase it enough to make it legit. I don't remember.
It's basically be nice and or we're going to cut you off.
Jane, I think we did it.
All right. Sorry about that. Cass is still trying to get on. I am going to try and we're going to open this meeting. Okay. So my name is Shane Rhodes. I'm the City of Eugene staff representative for this first part of the meeting before Cass gets back on. And before the chairs convene the meeting, I have a few reminders and introductory words. The purpose of the Active Transportation Committee is to advise the City of Eugene staff and community organizations and partners on the implementation of Eugene's pedestrian and bicycle strategic plan. Also to represent community and constituent interests in transportation planning decisions, and to provide feedback to staff on projects relating to walking and bicycling. Eugene City staff will consider recommendations from the ATC along with input from other members of the public during decision-making processes. Please keep in mind that this meeting is being both recorded and live streamed to YouTube, meaning that it can be viewed on the City of Eugene Transportation Planning YouTube channel, both right now and in the future. The live transcription feature for closed captioning has been enabled, and all verbal and written commentary will be held in the public record. Today's meeting will begin with a 15-minute public comment period. The public comment period is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the Active Transportation Committee on transportation-related issues. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. To indicate you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature within Zoom now, like Rob Zako has already. The chairs will call on you when it is your turn, and staff will unmute your microphone at that time. City residents, and for Eugene residents, your ward or neighborhood. At any time during the meeting, you are welcome to ask a question using the Q&A function or use the chat feature for discussion with other attendees and committee members. Comments will be monitored and recorded. Anyone making inappropriate comments will be restricted from the live portion of the meeting. Questions will be answered at the chair's discretion. As a reminder, civil speech supports everyone in feeling comfortable sharing their perspectives and opinions. Let's give one another the respect of courteous and civil speech. And with that, I'll hand it over to Cass and the chairs to convene the meeting.
Okay, hello everyone. And we are starting with public comments. We got some comments.
Yes, hold on. Let me make Cass the host really quick, and then she will be able to bring folks over.
Thanks everyone for your patience tonight with our technical problems.
There you go, Cass.
Is Cass still with us?
Oh, is she freeze? She froze up. All right. Looks like I can still see them, but I can't bring them over because I made her the host. Oh my goodness. Rob Zako, I see that you're up there first, and we will get to you in just a moment.
I can speak even if you can't see me.
Ah, look. Great, you came on. Maybe she is able to do that, but we just can't hear or see her. So, okay, go ahead, Rob.
I'm not seeing myself, but if you can hear me, I can speak.
We got you.
Good evening, members of the Active Transportation Committee. I'm Rob Zako, Executive Director of Better Eugene Springfield Transportation. And I want to speak this evening about the new farmers market. My wife and I had a chance to go on Saturday. It is fabulous. I guess I had thought that all the booths would be inside the building, and that's actually not the case. It's like other real cities all over the country where there's a farmer's market and like a open community area in different rows, and we had great energy. And I talked to Horton Road Organics and said, who gets to be inside and who gets to be outside? And they sort of figured it out. Some farmers want to be outside and some farmers want to be inside, and it just sort of worked out. What does this have to do with transportation? I saw that there's some new bike racks at the northwest corner, maybe a handful, but the farmers market is replacing a parking lot. And we're wanting to get people to not use cars so much and to walk or bike. And it didn't seem to me, I wasn't seeing anywhere near the number of bicycle parking spaces that you would think if you have a lot of people biking to the farmers market, which I and my wife plan to do this summer. So I just bring that to your attention. I don't know if there are plans to install those or to have bicycle valet parking, but I would say right now the bicycle parking that I saw seems to be woefully insufficient. Thank you very much.
Okay. See if there are other comments, and then we can, maybe city staff can comment on that if they know anything. Are there any more comments from the public?
Yes, it looks like we have 2 more people.
Okay.
So Cass, you need to say who that is and then bring George, ask George to unmute. And
Yes, I have lost host privileges.
oh, okay. Are you sure? Because I gave them to you. Let me see.
I know, and then the whole system restarted again. I don't quite know what's going on, but some sort of firewall issue is what's happening.
I got a quick message that said Ann Brown is now the host. I don't know.
Oh. Yep.
I am now the host. I don't know how
that
that happened. I'll make Cass the host.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
I didn't get a notification. Sorry, Cass. I was just twiddling my thumbs over here.
No worries.
All right. We'll get this.
Okay, Willie no?
George. Should be next.
George.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. My name is George McDonald. I live in Ward 1, according to this map, and I had an issue I wanted to bring attention to the Active Transportation Committee. Imagine this is the right forum, but I commute every day to University of Oregon, and I've noticed that almost every day there's this silver car that's parked at 455 East 13th Avenue. And it's to the point where I see people like pushing strollers or even elderly people with walkers having to go out onto the street to get around it. And I've mentioned this to some City of Eugene parking enforcement staff nearby who said they would take care of it, but it just seems to be perpetually there. And so I just wanted to bring it to your attention, not just because I think it's a little embarrassing in a city that's supposed to cater to people who walk and bike, that it's such a dramatic issue, but also it just really seems like a safety hazard for me to see pedestrians walking out on the road to get around this car. So again, it's 455 East 13th Avenue, and hopefully something can be done to address that, this car parking on the sidewalk almost every day. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Do we have one more public comment before we?
Bob Blinth. Are you on there? And no, okay. Tom Kreider.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Good evening. My name is Tom Kreider and I live in Eugene in Ward 5. I'm a cyclist and a pedestrian on the Eugene multi-use paths. And the reason I'm speaking to you today is that I believe there's a better way to handle the pedestrians and bicycles on the traffic on the path. Like all of you, I don't have eyes in the back of my head yet. I find the majority of bicyclists do not inform others that they are passing most of the time, and that they often are moving at an excessive speed. In addition, there are times when there are groups of riders who pretty much take over the entire path and you have to step off of it. Often those who do ring the bell are directly behind me without giving me adequate notice to move over. I also have a concern about the e-bikes and scooters, as they are generally going at an excessive speed. I hate to imagine the damage an e-cyclist could do to an unsuspecting pedestrian who gets run into. My suggestion to your committee stems from my experience on the Lake Tahoe's multi-use path. The rule which they reinforce with signage is ride on the right, walk on the left, with pedestrians yielding to cyclists. This system means that the pedestrians can see what's coming. Line on those coming from adequate warning. In addition, there's a yellow line on all the paths to indicate I did email Shane Rhodes a copy of Lake Tahoe's rules for your consideration. I appreciate your time and urge you to consider adopting rules which make the bike path a safer place to walk and ride. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Do we have any more comments before we go on? See how we're doing on time, 5:46. Yeah. Any more comments, Cass?
To George's comment, I will say that we have passed that feedback along to the appropriate parties already, and we will check in with them since it's clearly not taken care of at this point. So we will follow up with that. Sure.
And yeah, I wanted to say about George's comment too. We also contacted, this has been going on for months or a month, and we contacted the property management company 3 times, and they said they would do something about it. I did 2 times and somebody else did it another time. Each time they said they would do something about it, but the car, it just persists and it's right over the sidewalk and it's really bad. So something needs to happen. Is the city staff going to do something about that, or what would be the next appropriate step?
So,
I'd like to follow on with that. Why can't you just tow the car? You know,
so we have contacted parking services. That is the staff within the city who would do such a thing. And so while I know that they are very understaffed right now and short on people, we will remind them of the requests that we made and follow up with them.
Thank you. And
I mean, I can also just talk with Cass. This is Rob Ingerfeld, Transportation Planning Manager. I can talk with Cass about, you know, whether we can elevate this to like the manager of the work group if he hasn't been involved yet. So we can talk about that and what, you know, what makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Could you report back to us about maybe at the next meeting or even earlier if you get, you know, by email, if you get a response or a resolution, please. And then regarding Rob's, we're a little bit over time, so we're going to go pretty quickly here, but regarding Rob's comment about the seeming lack of parking, does city staff have any information about upcoming changes or more parking being added or anything before we kind of take this on?
I know that there is more and better parking coming to the park blocks more on the south side. And so I don't know the extent if there's additional parking that's being added to the side with the farmers market pavilion on it. And I know that there's a bigger, wider picture for what's happening at the park blocks, and I'm not familiar with all of it. So Rob's comment was definitely well taken and something that we'll look into.
Okay.
I can also add, I observed just today, I was at actually Sue and I were both at the ribbon cutting for the farmers market, and I observed exactly what Rob Zako shared. And afterwards, I ran into Will Dowdy, who's the division manager for the city's community development department, and I raised this with him. And he, you know, and I said I was disappointed, etc. And I think we both agreed that we would monitor the situation and look for opportunities to increase the bike parking if it seemed like there was a problem. Because I was just there today when it was, you know, it wasn't being used. So what would be helpful would be any photos, like Rob Zako, if you're listening, it looks like you're still on. So any photos that folks can share of the bike parking being over full, that would really help make the case internally that we have a problem, that we need more bike parking. You know, it's interesting because part of the challenge is like the space is really, you know, is over-programmed with just the need for the farmers to have their stalls. But one of the things I talked with Will about is, well, maybe we could take one of the car parking spaces on the Park Street and put a bike corral in there. And so, you know, we didn't really get into the details of what that would look like. But I think that's a viable option that we can talk about with them. So like I said, any photos would be great. And then we can keep the conversation going with Will.
Right, and of course, we can't wait for it to be over full before we have adequate parking. So would the infrastructure committee like to discuss this further or monitor the situation? Would that be an appropriate place for this issue?
I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. We'll...
And as the committee chair, would you be willing to, do you think your committee could discuss that or track that?
We can do that.
Okay, thank you. And then as far as Tom, your comment, does anybody have any quick response to Tom? Just, I mean, we did hear you, Tom. Although it was actually difficult to hear there was some kind of a static or something. So I don't know that we heard clearly all your comments. So I don't know if there's anything we need more clearly from you, but is there any quick response to Tom at this point, or?
I do not have one right now, but Tom, I can follow up with you after
That
the
sounds like-
meeting. I apologize. I was dealing with technical issues as Tom was making his comment. So maybe Rob, if you heard and have a
Sure.
comment.
Well, I mean, I think there's sort of two or three things that I think are relevant to that. One is we have our Path Etiquette campaign. I think you've had a presentation on that. ATC's had a presentation on the Path Etiquette program. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And so we're working over time on making that more robust with things like signage and center lines. I think the thing that Tom recommended that's really would be a change for the city of Eugene would be to have people walking the opposite direction of traffic, of wheeled traffic, right? So he was suggesting that we have it more like on the roads where if someone was walking along a street with no sidewalks, you recommend that they walk in the opposite direction of traffic so they could see the oncoming vehicles and make sure that they're off to the side. So I think I'm not sure what to do with that. It seemed it would be a big change for the users of the paths in our community. It might be something that ATC wants to talk about, whether you think that's a viable option. I would imagine there's probably pros and cons to it. I think ultimately the city would have to decide whether or not we supported that, but I think we'd be open to input from the ATC if you wanted to tackle that. Just briefly going back to the farmers market bike parking, I think a letter from ATC, given that you were talking about having the infrastructure committee take that on, I think a letter from the ATC to city staff, just sort of reinforcing the need for bike parking and talking about why it's important. We shouldn't have to do that, right? We should just be providing good bike parking for our facilities, but that's unfortunately we didn't do a good job with that. So I think a letter laying that out would be really helpful for us to advocate internally for having better bike parking there.
Okay, and this agenda item is actually out of time. So
Could you quickly address Cynthia's question? To whom should she send photos? I was going to say Shane, but he's gone out of town. So where should she send photos?
Any city staff person. I mean, I don't know. If Cass, can you just put an email address for like you or me or for me in the chat? That'd be great.
And Sue and I will discuss a little bit further Tom's comment and see if there's some place we can, what we might want to do as far as thinking about that next. Papa, can you wait, or is this, since we're out of time?
I was just going to make a quick comment on what Tom said. Tom, yeah, I've had the same concerns riding through the Amazon bikeway, especially the bikes with the big wheels and with the electric assist engines. And I don't know what the best way really is, except that probably the signage would be the best way to deal with that. But I've noticed that, and definitely something needs to be done. I had thought the solution to that would really be to make wider paths, but I don't think that's in the city's plans right now. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. Okay, let's go on to, we do not need to approve the minutes, I think. Is that correct, Shane? Because there are no minutes? Still,
there are no minutes this time. We'll send them out. We'll have them for you at the next meeting.
That sounds great. Thank you. A staff update and introductions.
Hi, I guess that's me. So we have some new faces in our team, both now and upcoming. And so we thought it'd be nice to just introduce you to some folks and tell you about who's joined our team. And so Catherine Rohan, who you see here on the screen, is one of our new associate transportation planners. And in particular, Catherine is focusing on pedestrian and bicycle planning. So she'll be working closely with Reed. And this is sort of replacing a position on the team that Lee Shoemaker used to be in. But really it's to focus on like pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure and other things related to that. And Catherine, as most recently, was the staff person for the Albany Metropolitan Planning Organization. And then I originally met Catherine because we were both on the trip for Rebecca Lewis and Mark Schlossberg's trip to Europe that one of your members, Clarissa is going on this summer, and Shane is too. So that's so she's definitely enthusiastic about building excellent bicycle infrastructure. Is there anything you'd like to say to introduce yourself to the committee, Catherine?
Well, you did a great job, Rob, but I'll just say hi again. And I think it's going to be exciting to hear your input as a group and your feedback. So I'm looking forward to getting to know this group. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. And then we have another new member of the team who's not here tonight named Trisha Sharma. She's also a new associate planner on the team, and she is focusing on grants. We kind of created a new position just to focus on applying for grants, because with the new infrastructure bill, there's a lot of funding opportunities at both the state and federal level, but they take staff time to apply for. So she's only been with us a few weeks now, and she's really dived into working, especially with Logan on our team, on grants for electric bikes and EVs, and we'll be working on a whole bunch of other things. She'll also be our point person on the planning side for the Franklin Boulevard project, working with me on that because we're gearing that back up again. Then I also want to announce that we have a new community engagement coordinator joining our team. Her name is Willow Hamilton, and she is currently wrapping up the master's program in planning at the U of O, and she'll be joining us on June 27th. So we're really excited to have Willow come aboard, and I'm hoping that she'll end up being the person who was actually the primary staff person working with the ATC. And that's all I have. Cass, was there anything else you can think of?
No, not really, other than to say Trisha wanted to be here. She is actually working towards a deadline. And so she'll have to be here another night.
Actually, I have one more thing. We also are going to hopefully relatively soon be posting a new position on our team, a senior transportation planner position. And that person will focus on policy, long-range planning, probably a lot of the work with like ODOT and state agencies, implementing the climate-friendly and equitable communities rules that were recently adopted by the Land Conservation and Development Commission. And so I'm hoping to post that position soon. So basically, like, that new person will be, again, the policy and kind of long-range planning person. And then whereas Reed is more of like an urban and street design and pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure lead on our team. And that's all I got. Any questions? Okay, great.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Catherine, for being here. Welcome. We're happy you have that background. That's exciting. Okay, let's go on to Sidewalks 101. This came from the Infrastructure Committee because they're doing some research and work on funding for sidewalks and infill and repair. Some of the questions, I'm just going to preface this, Rob's going to talk about this, I think, that they were thinking they want to know what the scope of our sidewalk situation is. What is the backlog and how is it measured in terms of infill and repair? Let's see now, how much attention does city staff put on sidewalks, infill and repair? How much are you able to? And then a briefing on how they're funded. It seems to me that came up one other time, but I think we'd like to hear that again. Those are the main things that we'd love to hear about, Rob, and anything else that you think is pertinent.
I'm having a little bit of a deja vu at the moment. Have we talked about this before, like in recent history? Because I feel like we have, but maybe we haven't, or maybe it was part of a bigger item.
I thought it was also that we talked about funding, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't think that we talked about how much attention city staff is able to give that and how it's measured. What is the backlog? How is that measured for infill and repair? So, yeah.
Now, so this is we're just gonna sort of scratch the surface tonight and then make a placeholder to come back and talk about this more. And one of the things that I need to do as the team manager is assign somebody to work on this issue because it's been neglected for too long. And we really need to focus on both sidewalk repair and sidewalk infill. What I can do is just tell you a little bit about how we approach them as a city and maybe even a few things that we've talked about changing. So, and they're pretty different from each other. The other thing we might want to think about, have we ever had Eric Johnson come to this committee? He's the manager for the city surface maintenance team that does the sidewalk repair. So that's something, and maybe if we have had, it's probably been a while. So,
Yeah, I don't think I've seen him.
okay, so I think that's something I'd like to do, is to invite Eric to a meeting because he can really get into the details of the sidewalk repair program. So Alan just said he was here like 5 years ago. Okay, time flies. So let's see, a few things to point out. And some of these things I'm just saying just to make sure everyone understands, not because I'm saying that it's good that we do them this way, but so sidewalks, number one is sidewalks are property owners' responsibility. So like if you own a sidewalk, you're responsible for repairing it, and if it's in disrepair. However, the street trees are the city's responsibility, and it can get really complicated because if a street tree's root pushes up a sidewalk, the property owner can't just go out and repair it. The city has to come in first and determine how to mitigate that situation, which could be pruning the roots, it could be removing the tree, it could be really working closely with the property owner to have the sidewalk rebuilt in such a way that it can accommodate the larger tree roots by maybe going up or maybe using some material that's more flexible. The city has a sidewalk inspection program. I think we have one inspector for the entire city where we go out and we inspect the sidewalks and look at where are there hazards. I don't remember offhand, but we're looking for like a certain deviation, a tripping hazard. I think it might be a 1/4 inch is the one that would trigger repair, but I'm not sure. So that'll be an item to follow up on. And then what we'll do is we'll send a notice to the property owner saying you have a certain amount of time to repair this. We also have our own crew that does sidewalk repair, and we give property owners the option of hiring our crew, and we generally provide a lower cost than if someone went out and hired a contractor. The other thing too is like one of the things that makes it complicated is that once we notice someone that their sidewalk is a hazard, technically they only have 30 days to address that, and that's like it's a ticking clock. And like you can imagine, especially right now, it could be really hard to find a contractor to do the work for you. And unfortunately, this crew we have, I don't even think that they're full-time on sidewalks. They do other work for Eric's team, like for example, replacing concrete street panels. It's like a concrete crew. We also have sidewalk repair can be pretty expensive. It can cost a couple $1,000s to repair a sidewalk, depending on how many panels it is. So we actually have a program to help low-income homeowners lower that cost, to where we'll subsidize it for low-income homeowners. And Eric could speak in more detail to how that program works. I think we also have an urban forester within our Parks and Open Space division who's specifically assigned to work with our sidewalk program to address, because so many of the issues have to do with trees. Like it's really like maybe a majority of the sidewalk repair issues in Eugene have to do with trees. So that makes it more complicated. I think that is it in a nutshell. I mean, you also asked about the backlog. I remember, I've heard numbers like 100 years. It's just like really, we're really just like scratching the surface of sidewalk repair in Eugene. I've heard that there's some cities that have taken the sidewalk repair back over. I think there's different ways as a city, in terms of like what can we do differently. There's different ways that we could address this. We could do more to support the contracting community to work with property owners. I think there's a need for more urban foresters. Honestly, I feel like I'm probably going to say with sidewalk infill, I think we need an employee at the city, like maybe potentially on our team, who just like focuses a certain amount of time on trying to solve this problem and working with city staff and potentially with the community too, because it's not an easy problem to solve. And when people like me just spend a little bit of time on it, and then it gets put on the back burner because other things come up. Are there any questions? Why don't we take questions about sidewalk repair now, and then I can talk about infill. Any questions?
Gosh.
Or ideas?
Yeah, so speaking as someone who's been in some of the subcommittee meetings where we've discussed sidewalks, one of the major things we're discussing are those other communities where the city has taken over responsibility for sidewalks and it's not the property owner's responsibility. And for me, it's important to understand whether, obviously there are a lot of questions about how to do that and how to fund it. But for me, it's important to know whether city staff support that idea before running down a whole road of figuring out how to do it. Because I imagine if we got support from the community to do it, but city staff were dead opposed to it, it would be challenging to implement. So that's sort of a question I have, and I know you can't speak for all of the city, so perhaps that's something to bring back to us.
Well, and I think like I think that we need to be in like the idea generation phase right now. So, like I think part of it is like documenting the situation and then generating potential solutions, and not like, keeping them all on the table for the time being. And then looking at what are the pros and cons of them. Like one idea I had was if maybe the city could charge a new fee to property owners that says like, we're going to take responsibility for sidewalks, but every property owner is now going to have to pay $100 a year towards sidewalk maintenance. I don't know how we collect that fee, but that might be a way to generate the revenue that we need, because right now we don't have much in the way of revenue to actually do the sidewalk repair.
Julie?
This is probably a really stupid question, but it seems to me it's like, how on earth are homeowners responsible for public infrastructure? I mean, it just seems a lunatic idea that you'd make a homeowner or a landlord responsible for something that is used by the general public, which is like a road. It's like we're not responsible for the roads in front of our house. Why the sidewalk? It just seems a very weird concept. And I think that very few people know that. I've had numerous people, complain about sidewalks to me. And I say, well, it's the responsibility of the homeowner. No one has a clue. They don't know that it's their responsibility. And I think if an initiative was circulated in the population of Eugene and we were asked to vote whether we thought that the city should be responsible for sidewalks or whether the homeowner should, I think I can predict the outcome of that vote. And I certainly understand the funding issue, which is just huge, but I live in a neighborhood where there is a long-term care facility near me, and the sidewalk's not bad, but they use the road in their wheelchairs to come down. They come down Harris Street on the road, a collector, rather than use the sidewalk because it's bumpy and it's difficult to get their wheelchairs open. It's just, wow, what a crazy situation. So that's sort of an amazed comment, I guess, and why are we responsible in the first place?
Right, good point.
Okay, and Alan?
I'll just comment that City Council is definitely aware of this. During their May work sessions, there was some conversation about how to deal with the backlog of repairs and the need for infill of the network. So I think it's really about pushing City Council to come up with some kind of funding mechanism and to elevate that as a priority. That's all.
Okay. Infrastructure Committee, have you got a little bit of a primer? And
Yep, I was taking notes the whole time, so we're ready for our next meeting.
okay, it seems like a really important issue. I think it's one that generated a lot of interest early on. In my own neighborhood, that I can see the sidewalks deteriorating like over the years. It's just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Really, it's just like, whoa. So, okay, let's move on.
Okay, so sidewalk infill. Again, building sidewalks is the responsibility of the property owner. That's like historically how sidewalks got built in Eugene, is that either, probably in most cases when new neighborhoods were built, the developers built the sidewalks, and then the city used to have a program, the sidewalk infill program, where we would go out and we would assess the property owners for the cost of building the sidewalk on their street. And we also did bigger, what we call urban standards projects, where we would actually improve an entire street, like in the Crest Drive neighborhood, for example, or Elmira Road, where the property owners were actually being assessed not just for the sidewalk cost, but the whole street improvement cost to take an unimproved street up to an improved street with curb and gutter, sidewalk, street trees, etc. Part of the cost was borne by the city, but a lot of it was borne by property owners, and they could owe, you know, somewhere like $15,000 or something like that, and then the city would finance that over like a 10-year period. Some of them were we've stopped doing projects like that to a great extent, partially because they got to be so expensive and a burden on property owners. We did have some programs for low income homeowners to mitigate the cost for them. Part of the challenge when we had a sidewalk infill program is that you can imagine, like, if you had a more challenging slope or something, it can make your particular sidewalk more expensive. Also, we created what were called local improvement districts, which is also what we did for the urban standards project. But people also had the option of just hiring a contractor to build their sidewalk. But we would put all the costs of coming up with the engineering, design, construction plans on that local improvement district, or LID. And so if some people left, the other people would have to share in that engineering cost, and their costs would get even higher. And so it just became sort of untenable. What the city has done in more recent history is that we've gotten grants to build sidewalks, or we've used funding from the pedestrian and bicycle component of the street bond. So for example, we have funds from the Central Lane NPO that we're using this year to build sidewalks on Hilliard, on Garden Way, North Danabo, potentially some other streets too. So we definitely built sidewalks over time. Sometimes it's part of Safe Routes to School projects and Safe Routes to School grants. Good Pasture Island Road is another example, where east of Delta Highway, where we built sidewalks and not too long ago on, you know, what is a pretty major street. So that's kind of how we've approached building sidewalks in more recent history, especially mostly on streets that already had curb and gutter. So what we call improved streets, but that for some reason didn't have sidewalks on them. It's more complicated to build sidewalks on streets that are unimproved because there's no, if there's no curb and you put a curb in, then you have to deal with stormwater. Sometimes there's swales along the sides of the street that and then you have more stormwater costs. So it's generally a lot more cost effective to build them on already improved streets. It doesn't mean we can't do it on unimproved streets. We have done some projects like that in the past. Sometimes we'll just build a sidewalk at grade with the street. We're doing something that I think is kind of innovative in the probably next year on Howard Avenue between River Road and Howard Elementary, where we're going to be basically building like a sidewalk / bikeway on one side of the street, and then at the same grade as the street, and then using like an extruded curb to separate that from the motor vehicles to protect the people who are walking and biking. So sort of like a protected walkway. In terms of like looking forward to the future, one thing that I floated with some city staff is the idea of charging people if basically the city sharing in the cost with property owners. So kind of revisiting our sidewalk infill program, but doing it in a way that's simpler and that's less of a burden on them financially, but still making them pay part of the cost. And then and also having programs for low income homeowners. And so the idea would be something like, we would charge you a fee per linear foot of frontage that you have, regardless of how complicated it is for your particular property. And it wouldn't be a huge cost necessarily. And then the city would use funds like from the street bond or from grants to pay the difference. And that way too would be more equitable for people in different neighborhoods, depending on whether it's flat or it's sloped or anything like that. So I think again, though, we need a staff person who can really focus in on this, document the way it is now, the way it's been historically, generate some ideas that we can then float amongst our leadership. And I think it would be great to also have the participation of ATC in that. But so I need to figure out, is it someone who's on my team now or one of our new staff that's going to join us, who's going to coordinate that work. And I think that's all I have to say about sidewalk infill. So if there's any questions or comments.
We are at time, so we can take Sue, and then I think we'll probably need to move on, but you can put your questions or comments in the chat. Sue?
So Rob, I was just going to ask, what do you see as a constructive role for the ATC to play in moving this issue along? It seems quite clear that, what we're doing now just isn't working. And so how can we?
Can I interrupt? Because I think we're going to have this on the agenda again. Rob said maybe Eric could come, and that seems like we'd be interested in hearing from Eric. And maybe at that point, I don't know, Rob, we're not going to meet again until August. Maybe you'd have been able to give some thought about your budget and if you can hire somebody. And it sounds like you need a little more time to really think this through, and then maybe we could address Sue's question then, or unless you have a quick comment for her.
I mean, just very briefly, I think that, as the idea is we'll have somebody working on it, and then they can get feedback from the ATC and get your ideas. And then, so I think that's one area where you can be helpful, is just generating ideas, giving us input. And then secondly, I think you can also be helpful in terms of generating urgency around this, whether it's to like our internal leadership or city council. So I think, both of those are valuable roles I think that the ATC can play.
Okay, thank you. And then Josh has a comment here that we can all read. So we'll work with Shane or whoever the new outreach person is to get Eric on the agenda and hopefully hear more from Rob at that point. Okay, let's go forward with a bike parking study that Anne is going to tell us about and then report on the findings they came up with.
Great. Let me just get my shared screen going. Shift from taking notes. Just a sec. Okay, you all see that? Okay, great. So I'm presenting a project that myself and a whole bunch of partners I'll mention in a moment I've been working on, including some members of this committee for the past couple of months. It's an inventory of Eugene bike racks. And so this started, I think, back in the fall, over to some discussions about bike share and e-scooters coming and some conversations about, what bike racks do we actually have in our community? And we don't know. Because there hasn't been a systematic inventory of the bike infrastructure. So we know where bike lanes are, we know where shares are, et cetera, but we don't know where people can bike. So that was really the motivation for this basically big field data collection effort. And I'll show you some maps and what we have and some fun pictures of, I'd say, unique bike racks that are out and about in Eugene. But mainly our objectives were, what are bike racks in Eugene? Where are they? What types are they, and where might there be opportunities to update or add racks, and where might there be gaps in the bike parking? So this was not just a U of O project, although a lot of U of O students participated. It was also in conjunction with Peace Health Rides, LCOG, and then the city staff. So it's definitely a team effort here locally. A lot of iterating on what data we should collect, where we should collect it, and LCOG is now basically the torch bearer for this project moving forward. So again, just to give you a sense of what this looked like, we started in January meeting all those partners together. We hired 14 students. In February, we trained students and started collecting data in Eugene. Student primary data collection ended around the end of March. And then LCOG has now again taken the project on since April, has expanded data collection to Springfield, and is doing a lot of data cleaning to make sure that the data are 100% accurate and really useful to city staff, to community, and will be a reliable and useful source moving forward. So again, we had 14 U of O students help in this. We had a couple other LCOG interns as well. But a big effort. We split the city into 99 zones, and then each student took a different zone to make sure we didn't duplicate efforts. So we had a lot of boots on the ground. We also had students do one test run of data collection, and then I think it was just Josh and I, Krasinski, did basic quality control. So we worked with the students to look at how they took photos, how they classified things, to make sure the data were as accurate as possible coming in. So what does this data collection actually look like? We basically designed an app-based survey. So students went out with phones into the field. They entered their name. That was primarily so we could contact them if there was any questions, type of rack, how many usable spaces there were. So we wanted to know not just how many, what the rack was there, but how big was it? There's a map to show where it was located. We also wanted to know how many spaces were covered. And then if there's anything else we needed to know about that. So it might be how much lighting or lack of lighting there was, if there was any standing water, if there are maintenance issues. So sometimes students mention things like there was a bolt loose, or any other issue that we could then pass on or be a resource to staff to address in the future. And then students uploaded a photo of the rack as well. So we have a lot of photos and a lot of information on racks. So let me tell you what that actually looks like. What do we have? We counted 2,433 racks in Eugene and Springfield, which we're really excited about. So that's individual, basically standalone racks. That's not spaces. There were over 17,000, nearly 18,000 usable spaces across those 2,400 racks. A little less than half of them were covered. So this is just kind of a big overview of looking at that inventory. I'll show you a few examples and thinking about usable spaces. So here's a bunch of inverted U racks. You could look at, we would look at, for example, where is the trees, where is the light post, are all those spaces usable? In this example, for example, you can't get a bike on both sides. So we would basically mark that down in usability. So only one bike could use this rack. So again, we're really concerned with not just what type of rack is it, but how usable is it? We saw some old wheel bender racks, for example. Half of these would be usable, half not, because they would block the sidewalk. Some interesting ones hiding in plain sight often. I think this is at maybe Home Depot based on the color. I'm not exactly sure. I have to look at the map, but you can see that it's this toaster rack that, again, you could use half of it. You kind of the side facing a parking lot, but nothing on the opposite end. And if it had been reoriented, right, you could put bikes in from both sides. So again, really thinking about the space availability. So we collected data on 9 different types of racks. So this was basically a group effort thinking about what racks do we have in Eugene, what do we want to capture. So again, all the partners came together thinking about what this was. Josh created this really awesome rack guide that basically had these images plus a description of these to help the students help identify in the field what they were. So we found that most racks around Eugene are staple or inverted U or semicircles. So about 65%, the majority of them. Another quarter are wave racks. And then you can see it goes down from there to schoolyard toaster, wheel racks. There's quite a few unknown. I'll show you a few pictures just because they're really fun and funky and just absolutely wild, some of them. And then again, you can just see a whole range of different types of racks, but most of them are staple and inverted use. Here's some of those fun, funky ones. Some are pretty artistic. You can see these are clearly very intentional bike racks. Some are just creative, I guess, a bit unique. Some of them we were just scratching our head with some of the designs of these, but it really documents, I think, the diversity of rack infrastructure we have in Eugene. And again, some food for thought, thinking about what types of racks are really the most usable for cyclists and some opportunities for some improvements. Here's a map of where those racks are. So again, we had students walking really every street in Eugene in these different zones. And so predictably, a lot of these racks are in commercial spaces. We counted racks regardless of ownership. So we didn't mark, for example, this is a city-owned rack, maybe it's a private business's rack, as long as it was accessible from the sidewalk and you weren't having to, say, go into a courtyard of a private apartment building, et cetera. And then we counted it. And so you can see where the racks are spread throughout Eugene and Springfield. So what's next? Right now, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, LCOG is continuing to add racks to the database. So they've expanded looking at Springfield to help support a potential bike share expansion. They're also in charge of cleaning the database and also maintaining it into the future. So we've really thought about how not only to collect this data, but how can we make it up to date and usable going forward. So there'll be ongoing efforts to add or update the database as racks are either removed, maybe they're replaced with new racks. We add new racks, we think about the farmer's market, right? If new racks get added, one of the goals is to keep this to be a really up-to-date database. The other piece here is there's a private side of the data, which is the ability to edit and change it. But then the goal is to add this bike rack data to the LCOG database as well. So we can have publicly downloadable databases of all the rack types and locations. So it'll be a public resource moving forward. And that's it. So look forward to any questions. If not, then I'm glad to have shared this project with you all.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Very interesting to see these studies. Anybody have questions or comments? Sue?
Yeah, I just stuck something in the chat. I find it hard to
I
believe
saw that.
42% of the racks are covered.
It's not the
listen.
racks. That's the tricky part. It's the rack spaces. And so, for example, a lot of times you might have a really long wave rack that's covered. And so you have a lot of spaces under that. It's not going to be half of spaces. It's most likely the big racks that are covered. And that's why you're seeing it skew more towards the spaces. We could calculate it differently looking at what share of racks rather than rack spaces. It's just not the number I presented. I unfortunately don't know it off the top of my head.
Alan.
Yeah, thanks. And do you know if there's any evidence that having a additional bike parking increases bicycle use?
There is some research on that. I would say it is correlated, but it's not the most important piece is really the riding infrastructure. So the feelings of safety, protected infrastructure, et cetera. But it is correlated. It's hard to know if it's causal necessarily. A lot of times, which comes first, the bikers or the racks. But I can also do some digging and pass that back to the ATC and find some specific studies if you're interested.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing. That was really cool to see. I was wondering if there's any integration or if you're planning, I know some cities have programs where you can request bike routes, or if you've gained any insights that might be useful for us to know or the city to know about what underserved areas might be.
Josh, you can definitely weigh in. I would say our phase of the project really ended with, I think, just collecting the data. I haven't done myself a lot of thinking about this. The hope was we'd be able to pass these data on to the city staff to help identify that. I have seen some really cool interactive tools, basically crowdsourcing suggestions, especially with bike share, for example, of people saying, I want a bike share station here, right? But we haven't explored that specific in this study. And one thing we've struggled with was, again, thinking about how do you add a request, but also make people know, alert people that, request ad survey, for example, is available and active and live, and also avoid any kind of data issues of allowing kind of direct access to the underlying data. So nothing goes amiss.
And
Josh, maybe you want to add something.
Yeah, I didn't do any kind of statistical analysis, but I've enjoyed playing around with looking at the different racks and things like that. And something that really struck me is that bicycle racks are most often associated with commercial use. And so especially in residential areas, especially low density residential areas, those are places where there are a lot of gaps in the network. One of the partners associated with this was Peace Health Rides. And of course, their interest is they need places for their bikes to lock up. And there are many areas where there's a lot of density, but not many public racks, especially the West University neighborhood. And so that was really interesting to see where the racks actually existed and where they didn't. And then just to answer Brandon's question in the chat about how often racks were deemed insecure, we gathered a ton of information, but it is kind of up to the city and other jurisdictions to go through that and tease out things like that. So I don't really know.
Yeah, I guess I have my hand up. I think it's really interesting, and I think it can be useful. I in my non-study-ish mind, I'm thinking, what are they going to do with this information? So I hear, Peace Health, and I know it's not up to you to decide necessarily, and maybe city staff, and like Daniel's question, where is the lack? Are there other things that I'm not thinking of that you think it could be useful to have this information?
I think it kind of goes part and parcel with thinking about expanding infrastructure, and to Alan's point as well. So if we do build out new bike infrastructure, maybe travel lanes, you have to make sure there's also supporting infrastructure to park it along with. So I think the hope would be as the network grows, the parking can essentially support it as well. And I think that can help identify. I think it is that piece of gaps and also type of infrastructure. There were definitely racks we saw that I would not either park my bike there or know how to park my bike to this rack. It's clearly a bike rack, but I don't know how to use it. It's absolutely fascinating.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne and Josh. It's a good thing there are people like you doing this. Are there any other questions for comments? Okay, let's move on. We have Oregon 22 World Athletic Championship and Riverfront Festival. We have information and a volunteer request from Shane, it looks like. He's still here? Or
It's going to come from me tonight.
Okay, yes.
So I wanted to give everybody an update on what we are expecting for Oregon 22. And when I say Oregon 22, I'm not sure how familiar everybody even is with that. There is the World Athletics Championships that are happening at Hayward Field this summer, this basically the second half of July. And in addition to that, the city is going to hold a festival that will span the 10 days of the championships, and we'll have, music and food vendors, etc., all in that space at the Riverfront Park, so that the residents can enjoy the games. They can watch everything. There'll be a giant screen and a living room area, a kind of community living room area, where everybody can watch for free on a big jumbotron kind of thing. To get a sense of this, from what I understand, this is the second largest sporting event in the world. So the only event that is larger than this is the Olympics. It is actually bigger than the World Cup. So when we talk about preparing for the city of Eugene to host this event, this is a really large event, very big deal. And we're going to have a lot of people joining the city during that time. So you might begin to see communications about it. And we wanted to share with you on the programmatic side that we will be hosting a transportation hub at the festival location down by the Riverfront Park. And that will be a place that will hold bike valet. It will also have information about Peace Health rides and e-scooters. Our city staff will be there directing people transportation wise where they might need to go. And we'll also have, a bike ambassador program that runs out of that space. So we'll have volunteers along the paths that are supporting people in knowing where they're going. They would have a bike pump with them. They'll have all sorts of information in their bag that they can share with people and direct folks, watching out for path etiquette situations that might be happening and reminding people to take better care of one another on the paths. And so hopefully that will help as we are trying to get everybody to these events. And there'll also be free bike valet at Hayward Field. So we'll have support there. And then between the two events, people will be able to walk and bike back and forth, exiting campus on Onyx, and then going down the Ruth Bascom path to get to the Riverfront Park. And one important thing to keep in mind is while the Riverfront Park opens tomorrow, and definitely come down for the opening if that's something that appeals to you. The opening is at 10 a.m. with some comments by the mayor, and there'll be some food and music tomorrow, and some more food and music through the weekend. The park itself will be open until July 5th. And then it's going to close in order to load in for the event. So in that, unfortunately, that section of the path that we've had closed for so long is going to be closed again for the the duration of the event. We tried every way around this, everybody. And there is a lot of security concerns around some sort of terrorist situation. They felt like they had to secure the area. So everybody will be required who is walking in will have to pass through security to get into that event. But outside of it, we will be doing our best to support everybody and walking and biking and taking transit to the event. That's a very broad overview of a really big project. Is there anybody who has any questions? Well, you'll be hearing more from us. I will post a link for volunteer bike ambassadors if anybody is interested in serving in that way. And we will be coming out with a basically what's a transportation options map with a few walking and biking routes to the event that will be to both events that will be color coded to try to help people get to those events, whether they're, on a bike that they rented or a bike that they own. And folks who are walking can also see the color coded like arrow stickers on the way. And as long as people are tracking those stickers, they can get where they need to go.
Thanks, Cass. Is there a training for people who sign up to do this, or is it just written information more?
There will be some sort of training for sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We'll wait to hear more then, it sounds like. Great, thank you. Okay, we are on item 8, e-micromobility, the e-bike expo recap, e-scooter update, and future programs. E-bike expo recap before, I think probably Cass is going to do this also, but how many of you were able to go to the e-bike expo? Anybody? Oh, just a couple of us. It was really good. Cass and whoever else organized it did a really nice job. It was well attended. People I think got a lot of value. I was there with a bike shop and showing people e-bikes, and we got a lot of people looking at them, and I thought it was very well done. So thank you, Cass.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Yeah, we had 7 different shops and makers, and we also had a representative from Eugene Recreation's Adaptive Bike Program there, and we were giving out information and everybody was trying lots of bikes. It was a very exciting event. It was a lot of fun. We did receive some pretty great feedback from the shops thus far, and whether shops had a good number of sales, and some of them did. Some of them also were just really happy to get greater brand recognition and to have so many folks come out who were curious about e-bikes. So it was a good event overall. Sue, did you have a question?
I was just going to say it was cool to see how many people did show up, and it just seems like there really is a lot of interest in the e-bikes, and I hope we can tap into that enthusiasm and interest and really get some increased user out of it, bike usership or whatever out of it. One comment that I did hear was it would be really nice to have, on the little route where you can ride the bikes, to have more of an uphill so that you could actually put the electric bike thing to its test, so you could see what it would be like to go up that last mile to your house or whatever that a lot of people have, because the route was fairly flat, so it's hard to appreciate the difference with a bike. So
I agree, Sue. We had intended that from the beginning, but it did not make it past our risk staff, and so we are working on that. If we do this event again, we're certainly going to try again for something that will make that workable for them. Because that is really important. I think when people realize that they can get up a hill with so much less effort, there, that little bell, goes off in everybody's head. Just, wow, this is amazing. So, so this is an event we may host again. I'm not sure. In terms of the electric micromobility side of this agenda item, there was an update in the InMotion newsletter, and I'm just going to put a link to that in the chat. And we're doing the best we can as Shane is heading out of town for this program and study abroad program. So I will post that to share.
So did you already say something about the e-scooter, or did you want to e-scooter update, or is that what you said is in the InMotion?
That's what's in InMotion, and so I'll just post that for you guys.
All right, thank you. So we're going on then, Cass?
Yes, thanks, Mary. Yes, I'm done.
Unless there's any other comments or questions for Cass. Oh, Josh.
Not for forecasts, but University of Oregon is currently trying to put together an e-bike lending program for employees where they can try out e-bikes. We definitely like the events like the e-bike expo are great, and we want to find a way to continue to deliver that like long-term sustainably. And I understand the city of Eugene is also interested eventually in putting something like that together. So thank you, Cass, for this event. And yeah.
Okay, and Julie says, please hold e-bike events on a regular basis. There clearly was a demand for it. People came out, and I have to say that we talked to a lot of people about e-bikes, and a lot of them were my age or older. So they're looking for a way to get out on the roads, and some of them had mobility issues, like, oh, I had surgery and I can't get over a bike, I can't pedal as much as I used to. So it's really cool that it does add more kinds of people who can get on a bike and want to. People are a little nervous about it, but they're really looking at them. Sue.
Yeah, I was just wondering, are there any plans to try to partner try to take advantage of all this interest in e-bikes? I mean, sort of almost like a Smart Trips program in that they've self-selected, they've shown interest, and I'd love to see people actually using these things for transportation rather than just riding along the river or just going for fun. Is there any way to try to promote spread the gospel among the new e-bike users while they're full of enthusiasm?
Well, I think that this event was one of our efforts to kind of get out there and expose people to e-bikes. I think another thing that we're thinking about for the transportation hub at the Oregon 22 event is to have something similar where we have bike shops have a tent in the transportation hub space. Those that are interested and be able to sort of share e-bikes and other bikes with folks. We'll have kind of a demo area that people can try out. And we do have a Smart Trips program running this summer. And I am not sure actually if there is a specific way that is incorporating e-bikes. So I will check on that, Sue.
And Rob.
Yeah, I think I want to just echo what Cass said about the Smart Trips program, because we have a newsletter as part of that program. So at a minimum, I think we can have some articles about e-bikes in that and include information about the eWeb rebate. We're still trying to figure out if we can do this, applying for a grant to basically help low-income Eugene residents get e-bikes to use for transportation. So we're trying to figure out if legally we can get a grant and then buy bikes for low-income people who would then own the bikes and use them as part of their daily transportation. So stay tuned on that. Thanks.
That's great. Any other comments or questions before we move on? Okay. And we are going on to, I guess we're having information share. It's kind of lumped in with project updates, and May is Bike Month, but this is the time when you can share any information that you know about. And I think that the city staff might have some project updates perhaps. So I'm opening it to the floor here. Rob, is your hand up for this one?
Sorry, no, I just left it up by accident, but I can think about updates, and if I have anything, I'll raise it in again in a minute.
Okay, thank you. Do you have, Cass or Rob, do you have any report about May's Bike Month, and in terms of how did it go and how successful was it? Is there a way to measure its success, or have you done a debrief on that?
We haven't done a debrief with our partners yet. And so when we kind of look at that together, we'll have a better sense. But locally, in terms of the turnout for events, it was pretty good. I think we had a few fewer events this year, just because of, I think, a number of factors. This is the first year in a while that the organization for the event kind of moved to a new partner. And so there's, a learning curve when that happens. And so I think we were just a little bit behind the gun with May coming quickly. And we didn't get as many events going as we all would have liked. And in addition, I think on our team, our staff was pretty stretched. But I think that for those events that did happen, I saw some good turnouts. So.
Okay, any other comments from any members here about May is Bike Month, or any other information shares? It's pretty low information share night, huh?
I saw that Sue just popped into the chat, the Sunday ride at 2 p.m. from Monroe Park. That will be a mural ride. Isn't that right, Sue?
Yeah, I'm not the coordinator. Mary's probably more in the planning of it than I am. But yeah, the Climate Revolutions, they're doing they used to be monthly, now they're more than quarterly rides. This one's looking at murals, so it's just a very slow paced ride from 2 to 4, basically looking at murals around town.
Yeah, there's a new mural.
There are new murals popping up even yet that every once in a while I'll see one. It's like, oh my goodness, look at that one.
Okay, last chance. All right, let's move on to the summer schedule and plans. I'll start this by saying that we are not going to have a July ATC meeting that is required because of the Oregon 22. We are going to have a not required meeting. Sue and I were talking about wanting to get together with folks who can, so it's not at all mandatory, but it is going to be the same time that July, what was it, Sue? July 14th, the same time, 5:30 to 7:30. And the purpose of it would be social, to just kind of meet in person. And also we would love to just kind of take a step back and look and see, how we're doing as an ATC, see what ideas people have. We won't be making any decisions, of course, because it's not a required meeting, but I think Sue and I are looking for, feedback, like how are we doing, where could we go, and any brainstorming, just a time to get together and talk really active transportation. It is going to be at probably the River Play Park because there are picnic benches, picnic tables there, but we'll send out some information, and I think we're going to get a watermelon. And so it should be just a pretty relaxed time, and we'd love to see as many people as can, even if you just drop by for a little bit. Anything else, Sue, about that?
No, I don't think so. It'd be fun to see people in person and hear your thoughts. Mary and I struggle periodically about how to make things more effective, how to make it more worthwhile for everybody. And it's hard to know what people are thinking when you're all just little boxes on the computer screen. So we'd love to hear your thoughts and just get to see you.
Yeah, and sometimes we feel like, it fell a little short of our expectations, so we're always looking for how to, like Sue said, feedback for how to make it even better. And then also, if you have ideas for, I think we are going to have some kind of we're thinking about having some kind of a retreat, maybe it would be like a 4-hour get together, and probably not in August because that's a big travel time, but maybe September. So kicking around ideas for what kind of content we'd want in a retreat. Is there anything else then about summer schedule, Cass, that you know about?
Just to add, Mary, that on the staff side, we are planning for a virtual meeting in August. And then in terms of, what type of meeting you all might want to have, whether it's an in-person, a hybrid, or remote meeting, maybe we can talk about that or you can talk about that now or in August, and we'll make those arrangements for September.
Thank you. Sue.
Yeah, I don't want to put Justin on the spot, but I think we had on the agenda something about an update on Cascadia Mobility, your pricing changes or whatever else is happening there. I don't.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why that didn't make it onto the agenda. It was on the agenda at some point. So if you have anything to share with us, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely. Spring ridership has been pretty awesome. We hit a record trips in starting in April. One of our weeks, we actually had around 6,000 trips in a week, which was pretty great. I think a lot of that comes from like good weather, easy renting because of the new controllers, and also because May is bike month. So it's been pretty awesome. We're really happy to report that bike share fleet availability has been hovering around 90%. We have over 300 bikes. So 90%, with the past two things of controller swaps, bringing them in, deploying them back out. And also our operations have moved from our original Third and Ferry now to the Nest. So we're finally moved in. We're not unpacked completely. Actually, my first day back was last Monday. I've been kind of sick. So when I got back, I was like, oh my gosh, like just boxes and boxes of stuff. So, but it's great that we're still, working really hard. Our team has been kicking a lot of butt and getting the bikes available to everybody. Let's see what else. We are doing a price change. So like last May marked our 5th year with bike share being in service in the city, with our, team and, us being a nonprofit now, to still kind of provide that quality of service. We just had to like kind of do a change on our pricing, and really the pricing itself is just the change is the single ride membership. And from that, it's going from $1. The original was $1 and you get 15 minutes of free ride, and then it's 10 cents after that. Really, we're just charging $1 to unlock, and then it's 10 cents a minute after that. And if you're on the monthly plan, it's not changing. So it's still that same low price of $15 a month, and you get the 60 minutes a day for free, and then it's 10 cents a minute after that, and unlimited unlocks. If you're on the Peace Health Rides newsletter, you'll get that information. Actually, it went out last night. So we're still communicating all of that to a lot of our active users that are not signed up. So next week we'll be doing like a notification on the app as well to let folks know that of the pricing change. So it really shouldn't affect too much. It's just a little bit of like a tweak. Fleet expansion, we are doing a temporary fleet expansion. So we have 300-ish right now. We're going to be increasing it to 350, a little bit above that, with support of the City of Eugene because of the Oregon 22 and the Riverfront Festival and all the folks that are going to be coming to town. We're increasing to around 350, and those are coming from the Nike bikes. If you guys didn't know, we have like over 250 Nike bikes from Bike Town. So we took 50 of like the best ones we could find, and then with the help of Peace Health and the City of Eugene, we just re-decaled them, and they're now going to be in use, at least for the festival. And then, yeah, we're still in the planning phase of getting the system to be expanded into Springfield. So with the work that Anne Brown is doing and her team and her students and Josh Kaczynski and all the other partners involved, it's been really great to kind of see, like the bike parking study, because at that point, we can also use that information to kind of really be a little bit more intentional about our placement. But also we're still not quite there yet, with having that happen. I think there's still a lot of planning that needs to be happening, and that's what's going on. So, and then I think the last thing is that we're working on, with the city, with the transportation hub, Cascading Mobility is doing a lot of bike valet, as Cascading is doing bike valet at Transportation Hub, but Peace Health Rise will also be there wearing that different hat. And we're planning with the city, we're hoping to bring out a bike blender. We're going to be talking to some local like businesses like the Laughing Planet and probably a few others to maybe do like guest spots on provide like showcasing like their restaurants, but also, like maybe they're near one of our hubs and they get to kind of just, blend some of their different recipes that they want to show off and just make some excitement around Peace Health Rides with just the bike blender. And then also, just getting people stoked about, checking out different businesses by bike. And today was my first day today is the first day kind of doing a brainstorming session on creating some Riverfront Festival bike share like memorabilia. So I'm hoping to get some, I guess, a final product in production before the Riverfront Festival so we can showcase it at the Riverfront. And I think that's pretty much it as my update for Peace Health Rides. Yeah.
Well, your enthusiasm is great. The whole team, I think, does a really good job. It feels like, I don't know about the rest of the members here, but to me, it feels like it's becoming more and more part of Eugene. You just see them around, don't you think? It's just like when you think of Eugene Street, you kind of can imagine one on any street you're on. So way to go. It's really important work that you're doing. I was going to say one thing too about the subcommittees in July. It would be great if your subcommittee can meet, but it is up to your subcommittee. There's not going to be the regular required meeting. And so if you can meet to keep the momentum going, that would be great. But if it's, you'll have to decide that as a subcommittee, what makes sense for your group. Okay, we have subcommittee report backs now. It feels, even though this is going to end early, it feels kind of long, doesn't it, tonight? So let's do this kind of quick, speedy. Sue.
Okay, I can do the infrastructure committee met, and the main thing we talked about was we're interested in recruiting you guys actually to do a little data collection. Both, the idea is to on the High Street protected bikeway to do something similar to what Ann's students did on 13th Avenue, but we have an opportunity to collect data before the protected bikeway and after to just what we'd like for you to do is, and I will send you the link to the little spreadsheet, is just as you're riding between 5th and 19th on High Street or on Pearl Street, to time how long it takes you currently to travel that corridor. So you just, as you start it on your High Street, if you start at 19th, start your watch on your phone, or start the timer on your phone, and just how long until you get across 6th Street to just opposite 5th Street Market, and stop the clock there and just time how long it takes you to get there, and then how many times you were stopped at intersections. And if you can remember, record where you were stopped. Stopped at, you're always stopped at 13th and 11th and 8th, or how many times you were stopped and where those stops were. And same thing on Pearl from 6th to 19th. We don't, we're expecting that when the new bikeway is completed, it'll take longer. There will be more stops. It's a two-way, and that's expected, but we just want to kind of have some way of gauging how big a difference it is. And we're also, and actually, Josh, I hope, hopefully it's actually going to happen. We're going to get some counts of current bike use on High Street and on Pearl Street, just to judge, are people, are people using the bikeway? Are they avoiding it? Are they, how is it getting more people to ride bikes? All that sort of stuff. So I will send you the link, and if you would just as you're traveling the corridor, just record your data. It would be helpful. Not exactly sure what we'll do with it, but it's data I'll give it over to Anne, and then she'll figure out how to make use of it.
I'll just chime in that I also put the link in the chat. And with that, there's instructions, there's tabs to enter data, one for Pearl, one for High, and there's also a link to a sheet that you can print out and like tuck in a basket or something and actually record your data if you're traveling the corridor as well. So hopefully that will be helpful, and we appreciate any trips you take on the corridor.
That's cool. Can we have a show of hands about if you think you can help out with that? Just a quick little, who might be able to do that or willing to? Looks like we have some people.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
I'd like to also mention we've been doing some experiments here at the university with instrumented bicycles. So there's one, I don't know if you can really see it, it's kind of busy back here, but these bikes can be tracked with GPS in real time. So we could do some measurements along those corridors if people want to ride, a funky bike with a whole bunch of electronics on them. That might be useful for this project as well. So I'll just throw that out there.
Do you want to put your contact information in the?
Yes, I will do that. Yep.
Okay, so now we're all data collectors. That's nice. Anybody else? Yes, Josh.
Yeah, and as Sue mentioned, we talked to some of the folks over at Lane Council of Governments. They do regular bicycle counts of streets all over the central region. We noticed in sort of their public data portal that they didn't have anything for Pearl Street. So we asked them if they had some extra bike counters and some capacity this summer. And apparently they do. So they're going to deploy some counters on Pearl Street. And so we can sort of get a sense of who's on Pearl Street now. And then maybe hopefully after High Street's constructed, we can sort of get a sense of who's shifted over, or not who, but how many have shifted over to High Street southbound. So it'll be interesting. It's really exciting to see the new infrastructure going in and how it'll change Eugene.
Cool. Okay, let's see, anything from the communication subcommittee or the education and program subcommittee?
I can do communications. I'm supposed to do education, but I wasn't there this week, so a little bit of a mix-up. So we had Sarah Mazzy from Safe Routes to School come and talk to us. It was really, really great. She's incredible, doing really, really important work. We learned a lot. If we want a quick update, I don't really know what the highlights are. For me, the things that I really took from it were that Safe Routes to School is not getting 100% coverage of public school kids in the school district, nor is there any nor is there any official policy for Safe Routes to School in 4J. There's a lot of factors that go into it. A few of the ones that Sarah identified for us were it sort of being up to individual principals of schools, which means that outreach is that much more complicated because you have to deal with individual people and not policy. And then a lack of programs and volunteers. So she had quite a few ideas, and she let us bounce some ideas off of her, which was really, really helpful. So I think that there's a lot of interaction that can happen between ATC and Safe Routes to School in the future, which is really exciting. Some of the interesting, since we've been on this data collection kick, some of the interesting related work there is that with crossing guards and counters for data collection for how kids are getting to school, there are interesting funding problems there, but it might be possible to be able to get more people to participate in data collection, which would be really, really great because 4J currently doesn't have much data at all about how kids are getting to school, which would be an important place to start. Right now, Sarah is focusing on the district's need index. So there's a couple of new schools that were brought up during the meeting, new elementary schools. And so that sort of feels like a natural place to start with implementing a Safe Routes to School or new ideas in that program. Those schools, however, are not ranked as highly on the need index that Sarah identified. And since she's so resource limited, she's really focusing on those 3 in particular. But it looks like if there were volunteer interest in those other 2 schools, that we might be able to try a pilot program, which might get some interest and energy rolling in the future, which would be really, really cool. Let's see. Yeah, so one of the other things from that was what kind of messaging the families get about active transportation. And there's not much from the city or from the schools, but there is some. And so I think that maybe this needs to be part of an ongoing conversation about how we see whether we can help with that or what we want to sort of just more input from ATC about what we think our role around that should be. And similar to that, besides the meeting with Sarah, we also talked about just sort of what is the city's messaging strategy. We know that some stuff got dropped when Kelsey left, and so how we could help with that. And then also how can we get more climate change focused messaging and more behavior change messaging and see what's worked for the city in the past and what maybe we could attempt in the future. I think those were the big beats. Feel free to jump in if I missed anything or if people have questions.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, messaging is still kind of swirling in the background. There's some interest in it, but it feels like sort of finding a way forward and figuring out which parts of it to work on. We haven't quite figured out, but we'll keep working on that. Anybody else before we sign off for the night?
Mary, if I could just jump in here just to remind everybody, Rob had mentioned this earlier. We have finally hired somebody to do communications work. So we're very excited. And she will be on towards the end of July. She'll be in for a little bit and then she'll be out. So about July 18th, I think she'll be starting. And we're very excited to have somebody again.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we've got, we'll see some of you in July, hopefully at the picnic table, and we're gonna be collecting data and being ambassadors and all kinds of good stuff. We're good? Okay, bye everyone.
See ya.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.